when you tell people what you do or what you have done, their attitude towards you may shift. They
Yes,
may
how that
think of you at the
works.
same level, and
Mhm.
then if they think they're below you, then they become superior, and if they think that you're doing something bigger, then oh,
That's
okay,
funny how people do that.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I never do that because I don't think you should. I don't believe that. I believe that in a show, everyone has something to offer. And I respect position. I respect the director's position. I respect the producer's position. I don't go over that.
yeah.
I'm below that. And I respect that. And I try to teach that to people that work for me because I think it's terribly important.
Mm.
And you need to do that. There has to be a structure. It's like being in the army. You can't all be the same. You can't all
Yeah,
be the captain. Someone's got to be the private,
hundred
and
percent,
that's just how it works, isn't it?
hundred
And also
percent.
collaboration, isn't it? It's a collaboration. Terminator was an interesting one because not a lot of I mean, there had been a little bit of pre-prep that had been done to be fair to them. But I gotta say, not a lot. So quite a lot of previs and all that stuff was being done whilst we were prepping.
Yeah,
It was growing, every day it was changing and it was quite last minute. There were a lot of very last minute moments in that. I mean, and scarily last minute. Even for me, I was like, this is last minute. Oh my God, are we gonna cope? But you do, don't you? And some people get nervous because some people they need more time than others, don't they, with the coping. Their coping mechanism is not as
yeah.
strong as mine is, and they go a
It's
bit
all up.
funny.
Yeah, it's all about ability to handle pressure.
Yes, and
That's all it is.
but I always try to say to people who are younger, when they're coming, I go, you will be able to handle a lot. They go, how do you don't seem to get stressed? I mean, well, I get a bit stressed. Yeah, of course I do. That's human nature. It's natural to get a little stressed. I'd be a bit weird if I didn't have a bit of stress.
Yeah,
And they say, oh, but how do you do it? And I said, well, because I'm experienced, because I listen. And it's important that you do those things because if with that, when you have that comes power, doesn't it? The power will come if you do that. And they kind of they want to skip all those hoops, don't they? Isn't they funny? They want to skip all that, don't they? They don't
yeah,
want they don't want to. It's like learning to play the piano. They don't want to go from book one to book two to book three to book four. They want to go from book one to book eight in a
yeah.
week.
That and plus, I think one of the biggest things, again, this is not limited to film. It's everywhere in every career and also in life. There are people who look for a problem to a
Oh
problem,
yeah,
and
in
there's people
everything.
who look for solution to a problem. That's
Yes,
it.
that's true.
And
I
and I
I
don't
said
think
that
that's
today.
experience.
No,
And I
I
don't
don't.
think that's experience at all.
No, I agree with you. And because I was trying to explain to one of the painters who's putting some construction up for me today, and we were talking about light givers, and he was about 24 or something, and I was with this other guy who's not 24. He's probably 40, and he's Indian, and this other guy was a big white guy. He's their 24-year-old, and then this. And I said, well, I'm a light giver. And the Indian man who doesn't know me very well, he nodded and he went, yes, you are, like that. And this other guy was just looking at us. He's going, what are you to? And he was painting. What? What's a light giver then? Like that. And I said, well, and then I explained it to him. And he was like, oh. And I said, now I've told you that. Now I've explained it to you. You're now going to notice that when you talk to people and meet people. And I said, also, what you're going to notice is there's people where you're quite happy to be close to them, even people you just met. You feel it's okay to stand next to them. And I said, you feel fine. But I said, you'll find with other people, your subconscious makes you stand away.
Yeah, yeah,
And I said, your subconscious is doing that because we're animals at the end of the day and we have senses. And he went, ah, ah, ah. And then I said, haven't you noticed that? Like with some of your friends, you like want to put your arm around them and you're quite happy to touch them. I said, but you're going to have other people that that you don't want to touch because they're giving off, they're like, don't come near me, don't come near me. And he said, oh yeah, I see what you mean. And I said, but with light giving, it's about the positive energy that you give off. And I said, what happens
Yeah.
to me is, because I'm a light giver, I said, people try to suck some out of me. And I said,
Oh
I can
yeah.
feel it being sucked out of me by people. So I said, I have to stay away from those people.
Toxic people, 100%.
And you know what I mean by that, don't you? And it was funny, the other guy, the construction, was going, oh, totally. He said, totally. He said, my aunt is like that. She sucks my life out of me. And I said, yeah. And this guy's there. Ooh, these two people. Anyway, and then he saw me later when he was leaving, and he went, I can't believe what I've learned just painting that wall up there from you.
That's awesome. That's all it's about. It's really good to hear those kind of things, and you know, and I think anybody anybody can be anything and they want in life, but as long as they have the right attitude,
Yeah,
that's that
totally. So,
that's all that
and
is.
I think when I when I interviewed for Terminator, I didn't actually interview for Terminator. I actually interviewed for another show that they were all going to do, which was basically like a Game of Thrones replacement.
Mm,
It was based on 3 books, and it was literally a production designer's dream. It was there were worlds that were like north, south, east, and west, and they were made up, it was fantasy, and it was absolutely amazing. I mean, they sent me the scripts for the first block, and I was like, oh my god. I mean, and it was like big, big amazing. And I was like, this is a dream. Anyway, I interviewed for it, and the cat was jumping up and the tail was all in my face, and it was in our kitchen, and they were kind of looking at me completely, and I was like, oh, that didn't go well. Oof. They're never going to give me the job. I had a cat's tail up my nose, and I'm not going to get it. Anyway, they rang back 2 days later because they said, can you read a bit more of the script? Can we talk about it? And I was like, sure. So then I ran back and I read more script, and I made some notes, and they were all there. And there were 5 of them, and they all said together, they said, well, it's a unanimous decision. We decided we just got to have you to do the job. And I just went, what? Like that? Because I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting it would go to a big hairy boy or something, not me. And they were like, no, we just gotta have you. Anyway, long story short, I then get this phone, and I was like, oh, and so I was like, oh my God, my dream job has just happened. The one, I've just done the one. Anyway, so then Tim calls me about a week later, and he goes, there's been a change of plan. So we're not doing that show now. We're going to do Terminator instead. So I went from dragons and castles to Terminator, and they booked Nyla, who did the costumes on Lord of the Rings. She's
yeah.
New Zealand, and she designed all those beautiful costumes on the Lord of the Rings film. Anyway, they booked her, obviously. And of course, when I found out they'd got her, I was like, oh my God, the costumes on Lord of the Rings were so amazing. And I was like, as a designer, I was like, oh, and it was great. And they went, yeah. And they said, oh, and I said, so do you have to get another costume designer? Oh, no. We've told Nyla. And she said, yes. And I said, oh, so she's gone from doing fantasy fairy tale costumes to jeans and t-shirts. And
Wow.
then they went, yeah, but it's $240 million of jeans and t-shirts. And I went, oh, okay, count me in.